Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. We're starting a new series on poetry, which is being led by Marissa. The format is that we'll start with a featured poem that we'll always publish on the meetup page so you can read it, you can think about it and come prepared. In addition to that, you're welcome to share any poems that you like. If they are related to the theme of the poem, that's good. You get bonus points, but if not, go ahead and share other poems too. And when you share your poem, you can talk a little bit about maybe 2 to 3 minutes about what you like about it, any comments on it. Then after all the readings, we're going to go directly into the breakout rooms. So we get to discuss these poems in small groups to our heart's content, but will not be content for sure, because the breakout rooms are going to end just when things are going to get good, so that we can come back here and we can discuss, we can do comments on poetry, on poems that we have read, what we got from it, what we got from discussions. We can ask questions, we can do that. So that's the plan. So let's get started with Marissa. And folks, if you would like to share poems, go ahead and type ! in chat. Marissa, the floor is all yours.
I measure every grief I meet with narrow, probing eyes. I wonder if it weighs like mine or has an easier size. I wonder if they bore it long, or did it just begin? I could not tell the date of mine. It feels so old a pain. I wonder if it hurts to live, and if they have to try, and whether could they choose between, it would not be to die. I note that some, gone patient long, at length renew their smile, an imitation of a light that has so little oil. I wonder if when years have piled some thousands on the harm that hurt them early, such a lapse could give them any balm. Or would they go on aching still through centuries of nerve, enlightened to a larger pain, in contrast with the love. The grieved are many, I am told. There is the various cause. Death is but one, and comes but once, and only nails the eyes. There's grief of want, and grief of cold, a sort they call despair. There's banishment from native eyes, in sight of native air. And though I may not guess the kind correctly, yet to me, a piercing comfort it affords in passing Calvary, to note the fashions of the cross and how they're mostly worn, still fascinated to presume that some are like my own. This poem I share with you, and I share with you a little piece of something that has walked with me for almost the entirety of my life. The very first time I read this poem, I was maybe 13. This poem speaks to me. I lost my parents at a very young age, and I like to sit under trees, and this song sat with me. And I used to just sit and people watch, and I thought of this one often. So I'm sharing this with you. What it means to me is the idea of there's some solace in the not knowing of a stranger's glance, in hoping that maybe without our knowing, there is someone out there who knows what you're feeling or how you're feeling, and it makes you feel a little less alone. So I view this poem as a poem of hope, in that what you're feeling, A, it's not that special because there's others out there feeling it also, and B, it's ephemeral and it may be passing. In time, I've learned to say to folks that what I find for the grief of death tends to be that, people say time heals all pain, all wounds. With this poem, I see it more as they don't ever actually heal, but they scab over. And then sometimes you accidentally pick at it and it kind of bleeds again and then it'll scab over. But this poem makes that okay, because you can still move past it, and someone out there may know what that feels like and commiserate. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And I think that we all need some hope. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Marissa. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark if you'd like to share a poem or two. You can go ahead and share one poem at a time and then type exclamation mark again to go ahead. We're going to start with Nicole, Makeda, Brian, and Joe. Nicole, go ahead. Nicole, are you there?
Sorry, I'm trying to like send the poem in the chat box. Can you just give me a second?
Sure.
Because I can't find the poem on the internet, so I had to take a picture of my book. But I just don't know how to send here.
That's fine. You can just read it out, Nicole.
Oh, okay. Just one second. I think I can get it. Hold on a second.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So something like that. Sorry, it's not. It might be have some words are wrong, but you know, that's all I can do at the moment. So I really like that Emily Dickinson poem, and I think what sorry, I don't know your name. So it's really heartfelt. So this one I like is from D.H. Lawrence. It's called Aristocracy of the Sun. To be an aristocrat of the sun, you don't need one single social inferior to exalt you. You draw your nobility direct from the sun. Let other people be what they like. I am that I am, from the sun, and people are not my measure. Perhaps if we started right, all the children could grow up sunny and some aristocrats. We need have no dead people, money slaves, and social worms. So this, I think this poem is really, literally like inner, how can I say, like a mirroring of D.H. Lawrence. You know, he's like he went on exile for many years and he didn't really get recognized, you know, in his time for his work. So he's a little bit bitter and also like hatred, like I don't know if it's like a self-hatred, but he definitely disliked people. And I think this poem is literally his agony at not being recognized by the people, but at the same time, he felt his what do you call, like his talent, you know, it's like kind of above everybody, not like in a pompous way, but in a noble way. He sees things really clearly, like the mass, you know, the like, I don't know. I think sometimes like like sensitive to people, you know, like there are not many sensitive people in the world, right? Like a lot of people are quite unconscious, and he just wants us to everybody to have this sort of very, what do you call, poet spirit, I guess. Sorry, I don't know how to explain it well, but I think it's like every single word just to express it. Yeah.
Wonderful. And what will happen, Nicole, is that people will get to discuss these poems in the breakout
sorry.
rooms.
Okay.
And then when we come back, people will, you know, kind of give their own thoughts about it.
Oh, sorry about that.
Kind of multiple passes over it. So thank you very much. I love the poem. Thank you. Next up is going to be Makeda. Makeda, go ahead.
Okay. And this poem is called Bury Me in a Free Land. It's by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Make me a grave where'er you will, in a lowly plain or a lofty hill. Make it among earth's humblest graves, but not in a land where men are slaves. I could not rest if around my grave I heard the steps of a trembling slave. His shadow above my silent tomb would make it a place of fearful gloom. I could not rest if I heard the tread of a coffee gang to the shambles led, and the mother's shriek of wild despair rise like a curse on the trembling air. I could not sleep if I saw the lash drinking her blood at each fearful gash, and I saw her babes torn from her breast like trembling doves from their parents' nest. I'd shudder and start if I heard the bay of bloodhounds seizing their human prey, and I heard the captive plead in vain as they bound afresh his galling chain. If I saw young girls from their mother's arms bartered and sold for their youthful charms, my eye would flash with a mournful flame, my death-pale cheek grow red with shame. I would sleep, dear friends, where bloated might can rob no man of his dearest right. My rest shall be calm in any grave where none can call his brother a slave. I ask no monument proud and high to arrest the gaze of the passers-by. All that my yearning spirit craves is bury me not in a land of slaves. And that is my poem.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Makeda. If you'd like to talk about it for a couple of minutes, you're welcome to do that.
Oh, well, it's Black History Month in the US, and I'm African American. And of course, our culture is not synonymous with slavery, but it's touching to me because Frances Ellen Harper Watkins, I'm sure I've just got that backwards. Anyway, she was born in 1825. And so she actually saw slavery. She was a free woman. She became a teacher, but she witnessed all of these atrocities herself. And she actually was from Maryland, but a law was passed that if you were free, you could no longer go to Maryland. So at some point, she was even unable to see her family. She couldn't go back home. And that just made her redouble her efforts as an abolitionist and someone like Frederick Douglass, who spoke eloquently about the horrors of slavery.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Makeda. I really appreciate that. Next up is going to be Brian, Joe, Allison, Paul, and Mike. Brian, go ahead.
Okay, it's the title of this one is The Combat. It was not meant for human eyes, that combat on the shabby patch of clods and trampled turf that lies somewhere beneath the southern skies, or eye of toad or adder to catch. And having seen it, I accuse the crested animal in his pride, arrayed in all the royal hues which hide the claws he well can use to tear the heart out of the side. Body of leopard, eagle's head, and whetted beak and lion's mane, and frost grey hedge of feather spread. Behind, he seemed of all things bred. I shall not see his like again. As for his enemy, there came in a soft round beast as brown as clay, all rent and patched his wretched skin. A battered bag he might have been, some old used thing to throw away. Yet he awaited face to face the furious beast and the swift attack. Soon over and done, that was no place or time for chivalry or for grace. The fury had him on his back. And two small paws like hands flew out, to right and left as the trees stood by. One would have said beyond a doubt, that was the very end of the bout, but that the creature would not die. For ere the death stroke he was gone, writhed whirled into his den. Safe somehow there, the fight was done and he had lost, who had all but won. but oh, his deadly fury then. A while the place lay blank forlorn, drowsing as in relief from pain. The cricket chirped, the grating thorn stirred, and a little sound was born. The champions took their posts again. And all began, the stealthy paw slashed out and in. Could nothing save these rags and tatters from the claw? Nothing. And yet I never saw a beast so helpless and so brave. And now, while the trees stand watching still, the unequal battle rages there. The killing beast that cannot kill swells and swells in his fury till you'd almost think it was despair. That's it.
Thank you, Brian. Would you like to speak for a minute or two about it?
Yeah, it's been with me for a long time, this poem. It was by, I don't think I mentioned, it was written by a guy called Edwin Muir. It's one that I've always never quite understood what it was relating to or what I should take from it, but it's one that's always there, and I frequently think of it. I've used it many times in other sort of readings and things like that. So for me, there's something very special about it. That's all.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks, Brian. Next up is going to be Joe, followed by Paul. Welcome back, Paul, by the way. Joe, go ahead.
Yes, welcome back, Paul. It's good to see you. So I'll be reading The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down the one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for the passing there, had worn them really about the same. And in both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on the way. I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference. And so, there's the obvious kind of, overtones with this idea of choice and uncertainty and individualism and conformity. But there's actually a really interesting story that I always kind of think of with this particular poem, and it was The Choice of Hercules. I don't know if you're familiar with it, that Socrates used to tell. And it was just one day Hercules was walking along an unfamiliar path, and I have some notes because I don't always recall everything from it, but and when he came upon a fork in the road, he sat down and began to contemplate his future. And unsure whether the path would, which path would take him, he found himself confronted by two mysterious goddesses. The first appeared, it was this beautiful woman, alluring woman dressed in fine clothing. She was called Kakia. Although she falsely claimed that her friends were called her eudaimonia, meaning happiness and fulfillment. She barged in front of her companion and pleaded very insistently Hercules follow her path. It led, she promised, to by far the easiest, most pleasurable way of life and a shortcut to true happiness. She told him that he could live like a king, avoid hardship, enjoying the luxuries beyond men's wildest dreams, and delivered to him by the labor of others. So after listening to her for a while, Hercules was approached by a second goddess named Arete. And she was less boastful and a modest woman. and who nonetheless shined with this natural beauty. To his surprise, she had a very grave expression. She warned him her path had led to a very different direction. It would be long and difficult. It would require a great deal of hard work. And she told Hercules that he would suffer and he would be reviled and persecuted by his enemies. But she also told him nothing that is really good or admirable is granted by the gods to men without some effort and application. So Hercules, would be called upon to exercise wisdom, justice in the face of mounting adversity with bravery and self-discipline, having to overcome great obstacles through courage and honorable deeds. And the goddess said, the only true path to fulfillment of life is one that actually has obstacles. So he chose arete, which is virtue, over kakia, which is vice. Now, he was basically armed with a wooden club, dressed with a pelt and a Neamin lion, symbolic of more primitive natural way of life. He went from one place to another his whole entire life, but everything felt like his home. The gods forced him to undertake the legendary 12 labors, including slaying of the Hydra and ultimately entering Hades, the underworld itself, to capture Cerberus and kill him with his bare hands. He died in agony. He being betrayed by his jealous wife, and he was tricked into wearing a robe soaked in blood contaminated with the Hydra's poison. But Zeus was so impressed with his mortal son's greatness that he granted him apotheosis, which is elevating him to a status of God of his own right. Now, the thing is that he became a hero of the Stoics, and this is a pretty well known story. And the thing that was interesting about it is that basically the moral of the story is that you have to face hardship in order to cultivate character, and that if you take the option that is comfortable, and that you're kind of living a passive and idle life. And that's where an obstacle is truly the way. And so it's the path of virtue too, that he chose. And I think that's, to me, where I look back, and I've talked about this in the past, is that I really haven't had a moment in my life where you really regret virtue. Now you're going to go through some very painful things, betrayal. You'll go through these things where, he was attacked continuously. But at the end of the day, he willingly, he wasn't forced he pursued virtue. And it reminds me of what we do here in a way. We pursue knowledge for knowledge's sake. That's a virtuous thing to do. And so I thought that is fitting in the sense that there's no reward here other than knowledge itself, and virtue is its own reward. So I thought that story really fit well with the road less traveled, because people often don't take the harder road.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. And firstly, thank you very much for getting us started on this path. It was your doing a meetup on If that started this, kind of planted the seed. Now, of course, Marissa being so good at gardening and with trees, she's able to take that seed and, build this entire meetup out of it. So it's wonderful. Thank you. And Marissa was wondering whether Stoics can do poetry, and you've just proven her wrong. So,
Yeah, they can.
okay. So next up is going to be Allison, Paul, Mike, and Jeff. Allison.
All right, so I chose a poem by Dylan Thomas, who incidentally I named my son after. And it is "Do not go gentle into that good night." Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at the close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning. They do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright. Their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men dare death, who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And I chose this because it reminds me of my dad. And my dad broke his hip this year, and he's 91. And all these relatives told me that I had to go see him and say my goodbyes. And I remember talking to my son, and I said, you know, this is Grandpa. I don't think he's done. Or we'll go see him, but I don't underestimate this man. And he's doing really well now. He's about to get off the walker. He's going to get just a cane now. And my mother had a different approach. My mother was diagnosed with lung cancer that was stage 4, and she chose not to have chemo. And she said when it was her time, it was her time. And, you know, people have the right to make their own decisions when it's their end of life. But I really kind of admire that my dad fights everything. And he's had like 40,000 things that should have killed him and don't. And I just really admire that. And I hope to be the same when it's my time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Next up is going to be Paul. Paul, welcome back.
I'm so fortunate. I can't even believe it. It's like so many of the same people. I'm totally blown away and very, very excited that you guys have formed a true community, that you're still here. And I can tell you about the timing because, and it follows perfectly from you, Allison, because 1 year ago tomorrow, I moved my 98-year-old mother, she was 97 then, in with me. And it changed my patterns, made this an impractical thing to do. She is still here. She is asleep in the next room. But I dropped in on this, just like you said, Allison, they wrote her off so many times. Like, Paul, get ready. It's the last few days. I said, wait, she's just a little down, you know, just play a little music, talk to her. So that's what I've been doing the last year, but I'm so glad I dropped in tonight. And Shrikant, your smiling face is a pleasure. Everyone I see here, I remember all of you. You're amazing. So thank you for still hanging in.
We remember you very fondly. So it's delightful to have you back. We've
Well, this
done,
is so cool.
just want to tell you that we've done only 750 meetings.
Okay. I got a lot of YouTube watching to catch up on, but and I think one of the last ones I did was you were starting this poetry thing or something, but I read a poem by Rumi, I think, long time ago. And so I'm in that mystical poetry track. If you give me, can I have about 4 minutes, Shrikant? I have two to read by a modern mystic poet,
Okay.
And her name is Chelan Harkin. And I'll read 2 short things and then we'll love to hear people talk about them, but I believe they're in the spirit of this group. Okay. The worst thing we ever did was put God in the sky, out of reach, pulling the divinity from the leaf, sifting it out, the holy from our bones, insisting God isn't bursting dazzlement through everything we've made, a hard commitment to see as ordinary, stripping the sacred from everywhere to put in a cloud man elsewhere, prying closeness from your heart. The worst thing we ever did was take the dance and the song out of prayer, made it sit up straight and cross its legs, removed it of rejoicing, wiped clean its hip sway, its questions, its ecstatic yowl, its tears. The worst thing we ever did is pretend God isn't the easiest thing in this universe, available to every soul in every breath. There's one. This next one is called Say Wow. Each day before our surroundings become flat with familiarity and the shapes of our lives click into place, dimensionless and average as Tetris cubes, before hunger knocks from our bellies like a cantankerous old man and the duties of the day stack up like dishes and the architecture of our basic needs commissions all thought to construct the four-door sedan of safety. Before gravity clings to our skin like a cumbersome parasite and the colored dust of dreams sweeps itself obscure in the vacuum of reason, each morning before we wrestle the world and our hearts into the shape of our brains, look around and say, wow. Feed yourself fire, scoop up the day entire like a planet-sized bouquet of marvel, sent by the universe directly into your arms and say, wow. Break yourself down into the basic components of primitive awe and let the crescendo of each moment carbonate every capillary and say, wow. Yes, before our poems become calloused with revision, let them shriek off the page of spontaneity. And before our metaphors get too regular, let the sun stay a conflagration of homing pigeons that fights through fire each day to find us.
Wow. Paul, what do you like about these poems? These are beautiful, beautiful.
I can't say, so I'm so in such a trance from saying it, I can barely talk. But it's the form of knowledge that this group struggles with because it's so cognitive so often, and yet we know there's another path to knowledge that isn't cognitive, and I think she helps us find it. That's how I feel about it.
Wonderful, beautiful. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Srikant. Let's keep going.
You're welcome. Next up is Mike, Jeff, and Margarita. Mike.
Yeah, I have a poem by Christina Georgina Rossetti, and it's entitled, When I Am Dead, My Dearest. When I am dead, my dearest, sing no sad songs for me. Plant thou no roses at my head, nor shady cypress tree. Be the green grass above me with showers and dewdrops wet. And if thou wilt, remember, and if thou wilt, forget. I shall not see the shadows, I shall not feel the rain. I shall not hear the nightingale sing on as if in pain. And dreaming through the twilight, that doth not rise nor set, happily I may remember and happily may forget. I have to admit, I picked the poem strictly because of the title. I thought When I Am Dead, My Dearest would connect obviously with grief. I am reading from a book of 500 poems that I bought because of this meetup group. So I'm just going to take Paul's comments about being happy to be with all of us again. I knew absolutely nothing about poetry, but when we were doing the Tao Te Ching meetups and you started to allow people to read the verses, which are quite poetic, in their native tongue. So I know Margarita was speaking in Bahasa, I believe it is, in Indonesia. Marissa was speaking in Spanish. We had several readers in Mandarin. While I understood a lot of Maritza's Spanish, the others came to me sing-song. It was poetic. And I was in the library one day buying books, just picking things up, and I saw this book, Top 500 Poems. And because of this group, I went from someone who this is like an intro class for me tonight, but I have the book. I read something by Chaucer this morning. I read Maritza's poem. I'm listening carefully to what everyone is saying here. And then I got a chance to do my, my own reading. So again, this is just a testament to not only the beauty of poetry, but what it is that we do here. So thank you, Shrikant.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I want to say one thing. One of the most beautiful things about tonight, this meetup, is that people are reading their favorite poems. So what that does is that the entire emotion, the entire expression, what it means to them, I mean, forget about what they say afterwards, but the poem itself carries a lot. And then in addition to that, they talk about what it means to them. So it's actually showing, and this is something you can't get by just from the book. So that's why I really love this idea. And I'm already I have enough experience to see that this is actually is going to be a great series, because what it is going to do is that it allows people to bring things which are meaningful to them and present it to each other. And we are going to see so many different voices, so many different moods. So it's just incredible. Thank you. Next up is Jeff, followed by Margarita. If anybody else wants to share a poem, go ahead and type ! Jeff.
Well, Shrikant, you couldn't have offered a more heartfelt introduction into what I'd like to share with you all tonight. It's the well-known poem, "O Captain, My Captain" by Walt Whitman on this President's Day. "O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship is weathered, every rack, the prize we sought is won. The port is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring. But oh heart, 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 oh the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead. O Captain, my Captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for you the flag is flung, for you the bugle trills, for you bouquets and ribboned wreaths, for you the shores a crowding, for you they call, the swaying mass, their eager faces turning. Here, Captain, dear father, this arm beneath your head, it is some dream that on the deck you've fallen cold and dead. My captain does not answer. His lips are pale and still. My father does not feel my arm. He has no pulse nor will. The ship is anchored safe and sound, its voyage closed and done. From fearful trip, the victor ship comes in with object won. Exult, O shores, and ring, O bells. But I with mournful tread walk the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead. So we all know this as the poem that Whitman was writing about Lincoln and the United States, and having led the country on this most challenging voyage. The war had ended and the Union had prevailed and the nation was intact, and the journey had required its people to face its overwhelming divisions and in a terrible and bloody war, as well as its original sin of slavery, and finally have it declared illegal, with much more work to do. And at the beginning of this reborn nation, he's murdered. I can hardly imagine what a terribly sad and scary moment that must have been. So I remember when I first heard this poem, I was 11 years old. 2 years earlier, my parents had moved our family to Washington, D.C. to join the Kennedy administration. And his assassination really ended and threatened our whole world, our philosophy, I think probably religion, our sense of meaning and purpose and vision for what the world could be and our role might be in it. This poem and it conveying its deep sadness and mourning was often read. And that, as we all know, is a very formative time in a person's identity and sense of meaning. And I grew up and gradually devoted most of my life and career to growing as best I could honorable and inspirational leaders. But this poem always brings me back to November 22nd, 1963, when I actually delivered the message to my class of his assassination.
Wow. Thank you, Jeff. I mean, these words, that's what a great poem does. It captures a moment and freezes the meaning of it, not only for the people who lived it, but for humanity. So you pick up, you as an 11-year-old pick up this poem and at a time which is analogous. And all of that meaning, comes through. Thank you so much. Next up is going to be Margarita, followed by Nicole. Margarita.
Sorry. So I'm trying my best I want to read one of the Indonesian poems by a very famous Indonesian poet called Khairil Anwar. So I'm not sure this is the best translation, but I'm trying. So here I put it in the chat. So I will read in English, but the idea, I also put it in Bahasa. So this poem is widely known because even from elementary school, we are asked to cite this poem. As a bit of background, Khairil Anwar is a famous poet because he writes things what he saw at the time we struggled for our independence in the 40s. So, and this is about I. If my time comes, I want no one to grieve for me, neither do you. No need for that tears. I am a beast from the group of the wasted. Let that bullet pierces my skin. I am swollen, striking, wounded, and I carry it run until the pain goes away, and I will be more indifferent. I want to live for another 1,000 years. So this short poem reflects what happened with our community at the time, because we were colonialized. We have this grief that we cannot do anything, but he expects that kind of struggle to move beyond our wound, our swollen pain, because there are things that we need to do. We need to live another 1,000 years. So yeah, something like that. I like this poem. So.
Margarita, would you do us a favor and read it in Bahasa as well?
Oh, okay. Aku is I in bahasa. Aku. Kalau sampai waktuku, ku tak mau seorang kan merayu. Tidak juga kau. Tak perlu sedu-sedan itu. Aku ini binatang jalang dari kumpulannya yang terbuang. Biar peluru menembus kulitku, aku tetap meradang, menerjang. Luka dan bisa ku bawa berlari hingga hilang perih, dan akan lebih tidak peduli lagi. Aku mau hidup 1000 tahun lagi. Thank you. I think I have typo there. Sorry. I will try to fix it.
Thank you. Thank you, Margarita. The other thing is that, these poems have music, have music in them. And so in many times, I read, I'm reading, for example, Nanishwari for my Gita meetups. And the music of the language itself is so incredible. And when you translate it, you can capture the meaning, but you can't capture the music of it. So thank you. Thank you so much for providing both. Next up is going to be Nicole.
Yeah, so I'll be reading Shakespeare's Sonnet number 56. I typed in the chat box. So this is a typical love poetry about two, I think, lovers. Actually, they possibly had some rows and they had a departure from each other. But one narrator was comforting the other one, saying that, sometimes patience is virtue. Time, the true love will withstand the testing of the time. So let the time to bring everything back together. But yeah, so there's a couple of actually lines that are really beautifully written. So anyway, so I'm gonna just read it out. Sweet love, renew thy force, be it not sad. Thy edge should blunter be than appetite, which but today by feeding is allied. Tomorrow sharpened in his formal might. So love be thou, although today thou fill the hungry eyes, even till they wink with fullness. Tomorrow see again, and do not kill the spirit of love with a perpetual dullness. Let this sad interim like the ocean be, which parts the shore, where two contracted anew come daily to the banks. Then when they see return of love, more blessed may be the view. All call it winter, which being full of care, makes summer's welcome thrice more wished, more rare.
Wonderful. Would you like to speak a little bit about it?
Yeah, I think Shakespeare uses like the metaphor about the waves washing off the shore. So one day, the waves gonna come back together after the rupture or the departure, and I think this really kind of resonates with what you call like the truth in love. Sometimes like when two people actually, let's say, like using like the layman language, if they got into arguments and they had some miscommunications and then they don't want to talk to each other for a while, but afterwards, after some time elapsed, maybe they can see a different kind of perspective than uniting together. I think that's how I interpret it. Like it gives a little bit like, gives you a little bit courage and also like a comfort or consolation if if I myself, let's say, encounter anything in life, with people I care, with some misunderstandings. I always have this like a very firm grounded faith that it's okay, if we are parting now, but one day we might be back together. I think sometimes like we tend to not have enough faith in people because we are all scared, right? We're scared of getting hurt, getting rejected. Then we don't have the patience when it comes to knowing people.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Next up is Marissa.
So I'm going to read this. This poem is just fun to me. I've found it to be fun for decades. It's Edgar Allan Poe's Anabali. It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Anabali. And this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Anabali, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of the cloud, chilling my beautiful Anabali, so that her high-born kingsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Anabali. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we, and neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Anabali. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Anabali. And the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of my beautiful Anabali. And so all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in the sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. I know technically it's a little macabre, but it's so fun. So many of my poems as a little girl followed this rhyme pattern because I was obsessed. I memorized this poem. I tried it out anytime it was poetry day at school. And I don't know, I just love the way it goes. I think it's whimsical. And I get now that it's really rather dark, but I don't know, to me, it didn't seem dark. It just seemed beautiful and so just lovely. And I was like, oh, he really loved her.
Wonderful. Now I have to read a poem in response to Paul, because this is from Rabindranath Tagore. This is in response to the first poem that you put, because in the Indian tradition, God is not elsewhere. And so this is number 2 from Gitanjali. When thou commandest me to sing, it seems that my heart would break with pride, and I look to thy face and tears come to my eyes. All that is harsh and dissonant in my life melts into one sweet harmony, and my adoration spreads wings like a glad bird on its flight across the sea. I know thou takest pleasure in my singing. I know that only as a singer I come before thy presence. I touch by the edge of the far spreading wing of my song thy feet, which I could never aspire to reach. Drunk with the joy of singing, I forget myself and call thee friend, who are my lot.
Thank you, Shrikant.
Who
Well
wrote that song? Who wrote that poem?
This is Rabindranath Tagore. It was the first Nobel Prize to somebody who did not write in English, I think, or it's the first Indian for sure, but first, I think, non-Western or something. Next up is going to be Jyoti. Jyoti, you need to unmute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Hold on one second. This is a poem written by Mary Karr in June of 1981, and it's called Lipstick. lipstick. It's Paris where a cigarette in my flashlight and a guidebook illuminates my mouth. Bonjour, Monsieur, Berlitz. This is my vacation, but all night I've untangled alleys. When I pucker into my compact, I see a woman stranded under fat, white lilac trees and the sky of Paris, threaded with champagne corks, shot off balconies like messages that will never be caught. I steady the map. I try to imagine the trail of white smoke my jet must have left behind, like the wet smear of my tongue licking closed this envelope. Some people never learn how to make a good impression, and my lips leave two red wings on the back of an aerogram. Inside it says, I'm gone, eat your heart out. It's Paris makes me speak this strange language. I strike a match on the zipper of my jean to check a street sign. It's the Rue of Burdens, and I shake the whole world dark again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shruti. All right, folks. So now we are going to go into the breakout rooms, and they're going to be led, facilitated by Marissa and Allison. So folks, what's the best way? We'll do it for about 20 minutes, and then we can come back. We'll have plenty of time to talk afterwards. Marissa, what do you think? What should be the guidelines for the breakout rooms this time?
I think maybe go around and talk about what spoke to you most today from the dozen or so poems that were read today. Excellent, excellent. All right, so folks, there are a lot of new people here. So we've got 4 rules that have worked really well throughout our meetups. We've done more than 750 meetups. Number 1, raise your hand when you want to speak. Number 2, keep on topic. Number 3, be brief so you can listen to other people too. And number 4, feel free to disagree with anybody, but do so courteously. All right, starting the breakout rooms now. We'll run it for 20 minutes. Then we'll automatically come back here to continue our talk about poetry. So I want to first, let's see how we are doing on time. We've got about, it's 10:20. So firstly, I am just delighted with this series. I think this series has legs. And I'll tell you why I think that. And then I want you to share your experience of it. And, so I'll go first, then Marissa. Marissa, if you do want to go first, go ahead. Or shall I go first? I want to go second. You go first.
You want to go? Okay. All right. Sounds good. So I want to talk about what I see as the potential here. So firstly, poetry is such a wonderful medium. It is able to capture these, large principles, as well as the smallest, most delicate feelings and sensibilities of all kinds. So it's like the variety that is there in poems is incredible of what a poem can do. Secondly, it's just beautiful. They have this beauty of sound, of concepts, all of it, of imagery that is brought together. It's a very quick look at a variety of consciousnesses. See, it is very difficult to actually get a sense. I mean, if as human beings, we are very rich creatures. What is going on in here is quite incredible, but we actually end up using only small parts of it. We get habituated into using certain, limited repertoire. What art does, art at its best, is it can show you possibilities that you had never imagined before. Now here, you have it coming in small doses, which you can absorb in minutes, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And they're being championed by people who actually love them. And that's my favorite part about it, because the poem read out is far more beautiful. Read out by somebody who really likes the poem is far more beautiful and far more meaningful than just reading poems. The other thing is that it's a way of finding good poets, good genre, good poems, because you have all these other people who have spent their life looking for and finding these gems, and they're going to bring them all and show it to you. And you get to share, talk to people about your precious poems. So I think it's a very concentrated form of getting to know what is possible to human consciousnesses and expanding our idea of what our consciousnesses can do, and do it in a very gentle way and very inviting way of saying, oh, this is possible. Oh, that's really interesting. I'd not thought of that. So I think this has just tremendous legs. So that's my take on it. Now I'm going to invite everybody to give their take on what they see as possibilities here of this series, starting with Marissa. Marissa.
So I have just realized today that as the series continues, I'm going to fall in love with all of you just a little bit. Because the poems give me like a window into a little bit of your soul. I don't know why I didn't realize this before, but yeah, that's gonna happen. I'm kind of excited for it. I am going to, if I may, Jyoti said something beautiful at our breakout room, a realization she made. And if I'm sorry to put you on the spot, you can negate, but if you feel comfortable, Jyoti, would you repeat yourself here for everyone?
Okay.
Thank you.
What I wanted to say, what I did say was that hearing everybody read the poem really added so much more depth to it, because everybody read it in brought their own meaning to it, just in so which words they emphasized, where the line breaks, like we've been taught in school that okay, line break and small stop there and then the full stop. It was just amazing to see how people had interpreted it. And then the other point that I think I made was that the precision in a poem is so consciously contemplated by the poet. Like, I write poetry, so you spend so much time in condensing it into one word and one moment that captures eternity. It's universal and yet very personal. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for, Marissa, but you can quote what I said. If there was something else you're looking for.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Jyoti. Yes, it's similar to what you were just saying, Srikanth, how we get to see it, even if it's a poem that we have heard 1,000, Oh Captain, My Captain by Walt Whitman is one that most of us are probably very familiar with, but to hear it read by Jeff, and then with the story that Jeff attached to it, it's like reading it for the first time again. And, now every time I see Allison's son, I'm going to think of, do not go gentle, that good night. It's just, it brings life and a new depth to somebody that you already knew. And it's beautiful. I'm almost giddy. I'm with you, Srikanth. I think this has legs. I'm super excited.
Excellent. Next, I'm going to invite Allison about her experience of not only just reading the poem, but of facilitating the breakout rooms, and any thoughts about that and what you see as a potential here.
One thing that I really liked was Jeff told us a lot more about the story of that poem and his experiences in Washington at that time. And then another thing that I really liked was Mike was talking about how, well, Mike, you tell us. Just repeat what you said. I've got you on the spot now. Sorry.
No, no problem. I just said in the breakout room, this is all very new to me. And I'm real excited for this because I don't want to learn the technical aspects of poetry first because it's so new. What I do want to explore is where it took me today, reading, I think, 3 poems, and then, of course, listening to everybody here speak. There's that I just get picked up and I go somewhere else. So I want to explore that and find out what it is that kind of lifted my feet off the ground, and then eventually learn more about, you know, the more technical aspects of poetry. But it was kind of interesting how that happened. And Marissa, falling in love with each of us a little, watch what you wish for. Yeah. Yeah, I hope I answered the question, Allison.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Allison, do you have anything more or shall we continue?
I guess we can just continue.
Okay. So the other thing, kind of following up on what Mike was saying, when this is what these meetups are about, this is all about learning new things. And I deliberately try to keep, kind of bringing parts of human experience that we have not dealt with in great amount of detail. And I think poetry is one of them. So I'm really excited about that. All right, so now I'm going to invite anybody who wants to make any comments about what they got from these meetups. We'll start with Joe first. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked this this meetup. I mean, I think it has a lot of potential. Hearing people's stories, I think, is something that helps us, not understand where people are coming from, but also understand ourselves. But what Jyoti said about the beauty of saying something succinctly. And I remember when we went through the poem, If, and, you look at each line and there is this idea what's the virtue and the principle associated with each line. And it was so powerful. And I said to myself, you can almost write your own Enchiridion using this poem. And for those of you who don't know the Enchiridion, it's written by Epictetus, and it's pretty much the Bible for Stoics. But it's a way of communicating how to live your life. But he says it so succinctly. And I remember when I was in a meetup with David about this, and he was reading it, and he said, wow, he really is saying a lot and a little. Yes. And it just caught him off guard. And I think that's the beautiful part about this, is that we're going to kind of look at these things and we're going to discover how practical they are in expanding our own thinking and our own imagination. And I mean, that's really, I think, one of the most powerful things that can come out of this evening is really, I've always said that, in order to have principles, you have to be able to state them simply. And poems are stated, it's not always simply, in a way. They're very complex, but they're condensed usually, unless it's like Dante. So, which, I had mentioned in our breakout.
Yeah, Dante manages to compress everything that was known at his time in this little poem. So
yeah, in that little poem, I was
yes.
glad nobody read it this evening. So
yes.
anyway,
Yes.
but I really think that there's a lot of potential here in what we can gain from everybody else's. It's like the power of crowds.
Wonderful. So the main thing is that we are going to keep this completely crowdsourced. So we're going to do that in multiple ways. You're welcome. I'm going to announce the next meetup right away. You're welcome to register for it, and whatever poem you're planning to recite, you can go ahead and put it in the comments or something like that if you want. If you want people to, not the whole poem, you can put a link to it or the name to it or whatever you want. You can put the whole poem if you want. So that way, people can get, kind of familiar with it. The other thing you will notice is that you can see characters of people by the poems that they are bringing and the things that matter to them. Because these are, it's because that's how art is. Art speaks to us. It actually, you choose art which holds up your own values. You choose art which has the same style of consciousness that your consciousness has. So we are actually, you're seeing this incredible variety. Next up is going to be Brian, Katie, Paul, Jeff, and Mike. Brian.
Yeah, of course, I agree with everything that's been said. It's a wonderful idea. I spend a lot of my time both reading and writing poetry and get an immense amount of pleasure from it. But what I like more than anything is going to poetry readings where people are reading their favorite poems or poems they've written. It's been difficult for the past couple of years, but there are a couple of big ones on Zoom. One is the Manchester Library Poetry Group, and there's a group in Boston who also do it. They hold irregular meetings where people are reading out poetry. And for me, there is really no greater pleasure than listening to people reading poetry. So I just love it.
Wonderful. And Brian, so we will be doing, you got a weekly poetry reading group right here. So you found a more regular group now.
That's wonderful.
Next up is going to be Katie, followed by Paul. Katie.
Yeah, I was just thinking a little bit about the Tao Te Ching. Sometimes like the reflections from poems, like in what you were saying about you had said I kind of connected two things you had said together from different meetups. You had said like sometimes like there isn't like a one-to-one relationship between words. Like it might be, I don't know, we might say Gravenstein, and maybe another language only sees it as a red apple. It doesn't break it down into smaller. So sometimes it's the music aspect of it. I think that's why other groups too sometimes call like the Tao Te Ching like proverbs, like kind of like it's like more like a paragraph. I think that maybe that might also relate to how it gets translated. It reads more like the original scheme.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. I mean, I certainly, the poetry of Tao Te Ching blew me away, and there also, you have multiple people. That's a very interesting example, because we have these Tao Te Ching, which is basically 81 poems, and we do this on Tuesdays, and we have a whole bunch of people, maybe 30 different people, going through multiple translations and picking ones that really speak to them. And different people choosing different translations, and multiple people reading out different translations of the same poem. And it's really interesting to see how much the translator brings to the translation, because it's like, to have a great translation, you almost need to at least halfway equal the material in order to make it sing. So that's a wonderful point. Next up is going to be Paul, followed by Jeff. Paul.
Yeah. same old story. You think of 20 different things, and then every time somebody says something, you want to say something different. So what do I want to say? I want to say that one is, as you know, I have this mental health counseling background going on with me, and the art therapists are way onto this already. And so, you know, there's this way you do an assessment for a client. But I now think, after this meetup, my assessment to see what a client is all about and what they need should be, please pick your favorite poem on friendship, your favorite poem on love, your favorite poem on nature, and read it to me. Because that's why Marissa said we fall in love, because then you really see the person. And I didn't quite get that until tonight, in a way. So we're all getting that in a way. So thank you. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Next up is Jeff, followed by Mike. Jeff.
Well, Paul, I have to follow that that setup. You know, some of you know that that my wife is that I'm in my second marriage of 32 years, and my wife is a psychotherapist. And I was telling Shrikant, you know, she says that I'm nearing a breakthrough if I just keep, you know, doing my part. And so one of her favorite poems is this one from Ogden Nash, who himself wrote over 500 pieces of comic verse, but he sets his vision here on the relationship between husband and wife. It's just 4 lines. It's entitled, "A Word to Husbands. To keep your marriage brimming with love in the loving cup, whenever you're wrong, admit it. Whenever you're right, shut up." So Paul, there you have it with, you know, with my live-in therapist, you know, a piece of inspirational and potentially useful, you know, principles on a healthy marriage.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is going to be, actually, Laura has her hand up. So let's go with Laura, followed by Mike, Allison, and Joe. Laura.
Well, I think this is wonderful. I've always loved poetry, and I didn't get to say what my poem was, but I'll say now. And I've loved this since I was a teenager. It's E.E. Cummings, and it's this poem about a plum in the refrigerator that this person has identified as being really beautiful looking and couldn't resist eating them, and thanked the person, whoever put them there, and basically not sorry that they ate them. And it's just, I've always loved that, and and I still love it. So, and I like E. Cummings, always have, and I'll probably have more poems that I like of him. So that's what I have to say. But,
thank you. Thank you, Laura.
It fits with my stoic personality, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is going to be Mike. Mike, go ahead.
What I got out of this and listening to all these poems is that life has beauty in it. Life and nature has beauty in it, and even things that are not so beautiful, poetry helps you find that beauty. And life gives you a kind of, poetry gives you kind of an inspirational shortcut to that beauty. Robert Frost said something like that, and one of his short poems, 2 lines, that applies to Plato's cave and quantum mechanics is, "We dance round the ring and suppose, but the secret sits inside and knows." End of poem. And that gets out of a message as to how we use poetry and other things to find that beauty, and even things that are not so beautiful. Like there's beauty in the ugliest insect, there's beauty in a poisonous snake, all those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Next up is Allison, followed by Joe. Allison.
One thing I really like about this is that I tend to have certain poets that I go back to and read again and again and again. And this is reminding me of other poets that maybe I hadn't read in a long time. But the "Oh Captain, My Captain," now I have a new memory of it because I always think of Robin Williams standing on that desk in the Dead Poets Society reading that poem. So now I have a new thing to think about when I hear that poem.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Next up is Joe.
Yeah, I actually went and looked at the YouTube as soon as Jeff said that. I did hear your story though, Jeff. But really quickly, one of the things that I believe Katie had mentioned is covering the Tao Te Ching. One of the things that we have is it also provides us an insight into the times when we're reading these poems, which is actually really interesting to know, is that what was really going through somebody's mind at that particular moment in time. And it gives us a snapshot of that time, point in history. So I think that that's going to be a really interesting part as well, is that why Walt Whitman wrote the way he did, or why, whomever, whatever period of time that we're covering. It's going to give us insights into the times as well, as much as it is to the poetry itself. And then you can kind of extract some general principles from there too.
Wonderful. Next up is Jyoti. Jyoti, go ahead.
Yeah, I wrote the notes in the chat. So because I'm listening so carefully to everybody, I was like, oh, I'm going to forget what I wanted to say.
Okay.
One thing I would like to say is Shrikant and Marissa, for the forum of Zoom, I think is just perfect for poetry as as a piece, as which art to choose, because we obviously can't be looking at paintings right now at the same time, and we can't be sharing novels, but Zoom, when we're all so far away and with COVID and everything, is the perfect forum for poetry because it's short and it's condensed and it reveals so much. So that was my first comment. And the other one that I wanted to make is that each of the poems brings so much about yourself in the choice that you make, in how you read it, and also in how each person embraces it and interprets it. It's always, there's so much difference, and yet it all comes from one poem. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. And Marissa, thank you for putting all the links. Folks, go ahead and cut and paste those links in a notepad or something like that, so you can have it. And what we will do is that we can go ahead and post it. Marissa, if you could go ahead and post it on the meetup or something at some point, so everybody will have all the links. Okay, very good. All right, so let's see here. So Marissa, I still want to talk about setting up this thing right. I'm thinking of expanding the number of people that we can get into this forum. And I think it'll be great to have kind of more people, even those, many people are not familiar with our forum. I think if we have just more people coming in, I think that's fine. Marissa, is that okay with you?
Absolutely. If you want, I know a few professors, and I can mention to them.
Sure.
Invite their students.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will go and do more marketing on Meetup to get more and more people, because I think this is scalable. Even if we had 5 times the number of people, it would still work. I think that the breakout rooms is a crucial part of the whole experience. So we'll continue to have breakout rooms. I think what we will do is that let people bring their poems. Let's not put any restrictions, because people will surprise us. They can bring any poem. No epic poems, no Dante, okay? we'll put some restrictions, time restrictions. It has to be finished within a day, or no, within like 4 minutes, something like that. But other than that, I think we'll have. So I think we are in a really good shape. All right. So anybody wants to raise any questions at this point, they're welcome to do that. Go ahead, and this is time for questions. Go ahead and put a question, question mark or to ask questions. We'll collect all the questions and then we'll all answer them. Okay. Well, we'll start with questions from Paul. Paul.
Yeah, it's a sort of a logistical, how you're going to run it question, which is somebody brought up another poetry group, but in other poetry groups I've seen, there's sort of an emphasis or at least an allowance to read your own poetry. So I'm just wondering your thoughts, Marissa's thoughts on that. I don't have an answer on whether that makes sense or not. I'm just curious.
If they want, if anybody wants to rent, to go ahead and read their poetry, they're most welcome to do that.
Okay.
But it's not a requirement. You don't have to write a poem in order to come here. Okay. So it's definitely that's great. I would love that actually. I think that would be great. All right. Any more questions that people would like to put on the table? Margarita.
Yes, Shrikant. I think I like the idea that we start this meeting with one poem that we can share the feeling all together. And then from that on, we can go further with our own interpretation or our own poem, because it's important to have this shared feeling, shared experience with one as the anchor. Are you going to do that like in the next?
Yeah, we'll always do that. Marissa will pick a poem, and we will always start with that poem. We'll put the text in the meetup. So that serves and exactly as it worked today. So Marissa will talk a little bit about it because she's been into poetry for a long time. So it'll be wonderful to have her share a whole bunch of poems and how she thinks about it as to kind of start things off, warm things up, and then have everybody share. Wonderful. Jyoti, what's your question?
I just wanted to request something. For poetry, it just makes such a difference if we have access to the poem before it's read. So it, when somebody reads it, it kind of goes by so quickly. So my question would be, would it be possible for people to post links to their poems before the meetup? Because I got so much out of Emily Dickinson's Grief.
Sure.
Because I read it so many times, and then I got even more when
right.
it was read.
Very good point. So what I'm recommending, folks, is that when you decide which poem you're going to read, in the meetup page, there is a comments section. Just go ahead and put in comments what poem you're planning to read. So many people would read it beforehand, and they'll be able to discuss your favorite poem with you more effectively, because they would have read it, beforehand. So please do that. It's not a requirement. If you forget to do that, that's okay. But if you can do that, that'll be good. Also, if you're planning to read a poem, just like Nicole did, if you want, you can go ahead and post it in the chat anytime. I think the Zoom has a chat limit. So if you find that Zoom is complaining about letting you paste it, you just divide it into 2 parts and post it.
Yeah, it does that. And I will continue to try to accumulate them in links. So at the very least, at the end, we'll have a link to it. Because just, for some people, it might be, I would not like somebody to say, oh, I'm not going to show up today because I didn't have time to write the poem or to post it.
Right.
Show up anyway. If you think of the poem after 2 or 3 people have read their poems, show up. Don't let it scare you away that you didn't have it prepared beforehand. I would hate for that to be a limiting factor.
Exactly. So all of this is just, ways in which we can offer more value to each other. At the same time, the biggest value we are offering is to be here and to share who we are and what we love with each other, because that is the thing that adds the most value. everything else is kind of gravy on the top of that. All right, wonderful. So Marissa, do you know what poem you're going to do next week?
I have some thoughts. I haven't actually yet.
That's fine. Will you let me know by today or by tomorrow morning or something like that, so I can post it? Otherwise, Meetup will automatically post a blank thing.
Oh no, I will get it to you tonight. I will go sit in a corner with all these good feelings from today and make a decision.
Wonderful. All right, folks. I just want to tell you that we do meetups every day. So this is Monday. On Tuesdays, we do Tao Te Ching. On Wednesdays, we do comprehensivism, which is a whole variety of topics and trying to explore connections between them. This Wednesday, we are doing something on neuroscience and consciousness and decisions. On Thursdays, we are launching a new series on Thursdays, actually, this Thursday, and that's going to be on crowdsourced self-improvement. Again, the structure is very similar to this one. There'll be one person doing a presentation, about 10 to 15-minute presentation on one idea. And then everybody is invited to talk about one idea that they have found personally useful to make their lives better. Not something that you read, but something that you have actually used in your life that has made your life better. Just 2 to 5 minutes. Everybody talks about their self-improvement ideas. Then we go into the breakout rooms to discuss all of them. We come back with questions that people have about them, and we all organize. I organize the questions, and then everybody gets to answer all the questions. So that's the format for Thursdays. On Fridays and Saturdays, we're going through Bhagavad Gita. It's quite incredible. If you're not familiar with Bhagavad Gita, Indian mind is very different from the Western mind. It's well worth, just like it is well worth looking at the Chinese mind in Tao Te Ching, it's well worth looking at the Indian mind. And Bhagavad Gita is the best, the largest source for that. So that's Thursday and Friday at 9 p.m. We're launching a new series on digital Catholic social teaching by a gentleman called Mark Stallman. His specialty is understanding what the digital world, internet, is doing to our culture. And this time he's exploring what it is doing to religion and how is it likely to transform religion. So that's the theme, and that's going to be at 3 p.m. on Sundays. And at 5 p.m. on Sunday, we're doing Dostoevsky's Possessed or Demons. So we have a full range of meetups for you, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye, everybody. And thank you, Marissa. Fantastic job. I think this is a winner.
I'm excited. See you all next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.